But they're training the fuck out of me. Bro, what? This thing scares me. I feel everyone's scratching. We have to have it this low. There's really nothing much we can do about it. Or we can hold on, make it higher and then we'll make it smaller. That's really ugly, never mind.
That's too low.
No, it has to be this low.
No, I meant it seems.
It's not touching this.
Okay, I think that's fine.
You can't make it any lower than this. Maybe a bit smaller.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
As long as it like, okay, maybe a little bit.
We can't shift the spot any further up anyways. Not much we can do.
The other one, yeah, I think the problem.
SDLT, are we ready? Hello?
It's already a brightest. It's brightest already? Yeah, it's already brightest already. Okay, that works. Alright, fine. Alright, this is the brightest.
But the last one's older. I don't think they had the. They should have gotten the ball changed.
You guys ready? Do this. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second TEDx Youth event at HKIS. I think that deserves a round of applause. We are welcomed by 5 brilliant student speakers and 1 lovely teacher speaker that has given all of their time to come and help us with this event. While choosing the topic, Nick and I definitely had a difficult time choosing between the wide varieties of circumstances that are going on in our life right now. Last year's topic of havoc and harmony really spoke to the current situation, but in this year of rebuilding, of growth, of encouragement, we decided that the new topic should be restoration. Restoration of the past, restoration of all of our values and our hopes and our dreams. They're finally coming back to surface this year. So we feel like this topic is very fitting of the optimism in our future and the next year to come, and how we hope that it will turn out to be one of hope and optimism.
Now we have a program for you, from topics from thrifting to beauty standards to even hedging. We hope that you guys can learn some new perspectives about how we can restore our world, especially after all these troubles, and perhaps gain some new perspectives, learn some new things. And we're very excited to have you guys here.
Yeah, so with that being said, we have our signature TED video that is shown at the start of each TEDx event. The audience is reminded to please not record the speeches or post it on the internet. We are actually live streaming it now with SDLT, and we will be recording this event and posting it for you guys to see later. But yeah, without further ado,
enjoy.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
So without further ado, we would like to invite our first speaker, Jane Kuhn, who will be discussing beauty and movement studies.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Just last year, I was in my living room watching a heated debate unfold on TV. Ardent women and men gathered in a room, their eyes burning with rage, their hands clenched in fury as they faced off against Florida's strongest lawmakers taking a stand against face masks. I'm sure you've all heard about this outrage blazing across the world already. I mean, Senator Mike Lee, mind you, a real senator, even went as far as to say that by fighting against masks, you are protecting the country's free speech, which masks, due to how they cover your faces, are an active violation of. Other impassioned individuals stated, with robust evidence and confidence, that masks go against God's plans and are the birthchild of Satanism, pedophilia, and even communism. By even daring to utter a possible mandate of masks, lawmakers are going to, and I quote, get punished by God and arrested for crimes against humanity. And I believe I speak for all of us when I say, Karen, Free speech has never sounded bitter. Now, as I sat there on my sofa soaking all of this in, a question occurred to me. Where on earth did these people get this information from? Because I've never stumbled upon any post, tweet, or article saying that masks go against the Constitution or the Bible. So I, as one does, scoured the internet to find an answer. And as I read website after website, article after article, they all sang the same song. Social media. So how is social media driving the tidal wave of misinformation and polarization? What are the harms of this phenomenon? And how do we avoid falling down the rabbit hole of deception and hostility that we face in our daily lives? Now, according to MIT, social media is a hotspot for falsity, as misinformation spreads 6 times faster than the truth. And a study in January 2022 stated that 58.4% of the global population use these platforms. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook have compelled us into a never-ceasing trance, so much so that they've become as much of our reality as the actual world around us. I mean, backtrack 10 years ago, and people got their daily cake from a morning coffee. Now, moms get their daily cake by looking at their child's screen time. Needless to say, if more than half the population uses social media, and if false information is as prevalent as it is today, man, are we heading towards destruction. And believe me, that's not even the worst part. According to Connie Akavan, the executive director of the USC Center for the Political Future, false information and social media algorithms are driving us apart towards polarization. But hey, here's some happy news. In 2019, a survey was conducted asking Americans, do you think we'll be better off as a country if large numbers of the opposite political party just die? 15% of Republicans and 20% of Democrats said yes, die. To what extent has the current informational structure failed us? If human beings of the same country, can crave someone else's demise for their mere political beliefs. Now this begs the question, how? And why? Why is it that social media has driven this wedge between us? Well, it all boils down to one thing. The thing we all know and love, money. As stated by our favorite Harvard dropout, Mark Zuckerberg, the revenue stream of social media platforms come from advertisements, which depend on how much time we spend on the app. And so in order to keep cash flowing in, the platforms need to keep us locked in, scrolling mindlessly across our screens. They will do anything to keep us engaged. Now we all have something in it, a natural tendency within our subconsciousness that all of us heed to. I'm talking about confirmation bias, which is when we favor information that supports our own beliefs and values. It's also how social media attracts and engages us. Don't believe me? Ask science journalist David McRaney, who stated the fact that social media platforms confirm what we already believe is the reason many of us use them in the first place. By measuring what posts we have liked, what tweets we have retweeted, the platform's adaptive algorithms flood us with similar information to keep us scrolling, and in turn, feed their gluttonous appetites for money. We live in a world where instead of people being shaped by information, information is being shaped by people. Now you might be thinking, well, isn't this a good thing though? I mean, obviously, I want to see what I like on social media. But if we were to dig deeper, a larger issue arises: the onset of echo chambers, detrimental environments, where alternative perspectives are blocked off, for we are only recommended information that reinforces our own beliefs. In such atmospheres, misinformation flourishes, for our confirmation bias encourages us to believe everything we see, as long as it aligns with what we believe. And if we were to continually see on our timeline a single story reiterated over and over again like a video set on loop, combined with atrocious falsehoods and emotion-inducing phrases designed for engagement, it is to no surprise that polarization is as prevalent as it is today. And so it is to no surprise that in 2020, due to the extremism brought about by our division, protests from both the left and right political parties have instigated violence in the streets of America. It is to no surprise that anti-maskers are calling face masks a crime against humanity. It is to no surprise that many believe mRNA vaccines alter your DNA, a testament that is clearly false, but my own mother has repeated. And it is to no surprise that here in Hong Kong, political polarization has driven a trench through our population, so deep that I am afraid it might never recover again. And I hope you will agree with me when I say that these echo chambers are the true crimes against humanity. Social media aims to connect the world, but is actually driving us apart. And in that process, deception is perpetuated, misunderstandings created, and people, same ancestry, with similar blood coursing through our veins, are separated. But enough of the cynicism. It is time we take conscious action to seek restoration for our informational structure. And the first step to do so is to be actively aware of your confirmation bias. Because in order to fix a problem, you gotta admit you have one yourself. Next, reduce interaction with the algorithm. Refrain from liking or saving posts so that they can't be overly catered to your preference. And finally, don't make social media your only source of information. Get off of Twitter and branch out to more unbiased and reliable news sites where all perspectives are shared. Because we are a people whose stories are not black or white, right or left. In other words, you don't need to hate Pete Davidson in order to love Kanye. You don't need to hate Republicans in order to be a Democrat. You see, polarization is nothing but a vessel tearing us apart, eating our species from within. And if it wins, devastation begins. Helen Keller once stated that alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And believe me when I say that so much still needs to be done. And so I encourage you all here today to defy the echo chamber, reject the spread of misinformation, so that one day, just one day, the way in which we gain and consume information can be restored. Thank you.
So, thank you so much for that speech, Jane. Now, coming up next, we have our very own, HKIS's very own senior, the sole senior, Laura Park, who will be discussing how positivity can sometimes lead to depression in inverse relationship.
I'm a little nervous, but growing up, I was taught that it's good to be happy all the time. On paper, that makes sense, right? To suggest anything else would seem kind of ridiculous. Back in 5th grade, I watched the movie Inside Out, where a young teen girl, Riley, had her 5 main emotions personified in her head. When I watched the movie in the theater, I understood why Joy tried to suppress sadness as much as possible in order to maintain Riley's happiness. That's why, when sadness was the one to save Riley, I was just confused. I didn't get the message of the movie whatsoever, but looking back now, I finally understand. I was diagnosed with depression on November 10th, 2020. Honestly, in the beginning, it wasn't that bad. The best word to describe me then would probably be sedentary. I just kind of lie down, not meet friends, not do homework, not do anything really. It wasn't great, but there weren't ever any crazy meltdowns, at least not yet. One of the most memorable incidents I've had was about 5 months later. I was deep in the second semester junior grind with the infamous 3 APs and 2 honors courses that I had to take. One time, I was in the MSC during lunch, and I burst into tears. It was the type of crying where you feel like you can't breathe because of how intensely you're sobbing. I don't even remember what triggered it. I was just so overwhelmed by everything. The people there were amazing. Hugs, tissues, listening to my incomprehensible attempt to explain my emotions. But there was one thing they said, and what almost everyone says, that stuck with me and made me feel a little bit worse, that it'll all be okay. In reality, when I'm that sobbing mess, it doesn't seem like I'll be okay. I'm not able to see any future where I won't be miserable. So when people say that I'll be okay, I just feel alone. Like they don't understand my feeling of utter hopelessness and that it's impossible that anyone else ever would. Obviously, that mentality is illogical. Approximately 280 million people across the world have been diagnosed with depression. But when I feel like my emotions are misunderstood by everyone around me, it's difficult to remember how many people feel the same way as I do. The misunderstanding ultimately made me feel like I needed to conceal my depression as much as possible. Because I was just sick of hearing those same words over and over and feeling like no one could help me. This phenomenon known as toxic positivity is the belief that no matter how dire a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. This can manifest itself in the way people act, saying things like, look on the bright side, or everything happens for a reason. Although people often say these things with the best intentions, sometimes these words can come across as shaming a person for having negative emotions. It perpetuates the narrative that it's not okay for those people to express themselves authentically, and that they need to conceal their negativity. I honestly don't blame anyone who tries to comfort me this way though, because unfortunately, this is how many of us are taught to respond when someone else is feeling sad. Theoretically, it seems logical that sending positivity would make the other person feel better. But in reality, trying to force happiness on someone just makes them feel like they need to shove the misery all the way down. Until, eventually, it all blows up. About a week and a half after the MSC incident, I experienced my own implosion. I was at a gathering at a friend's house. It was the beginning of spring break, and it was just good vibes all around. But at around 11 p.m., I was alone, outside in my friend's backyard, and I started bawling. To this day, I don't really know why I started crying then and there, just like the first time this happened to me. And that's another reason why it was so scary for me and everyone else there. Friends were trying to comfort me, but I couldn't even articulate why I was in so much pain, so everyone was at a loss. Eventually, one of my friends brought me home, holding my hand the entire way. But it just kind of felt like I was lost inside, and she couldn't reach me. When I got home, I decided to go up to the roof, telling myself that I only wanted some fresh air and to look at the sky before going to bed. I wound up lying on my back there for a while until I got a call from my mom. My friend who had dropped me off actually called my parents because she was worried, despite it being 2 a.m., to make sure I got home okay. And when I wasn't in the house, everyone was terrified. My dad ran up and brought me home, and after that night, I spent the rest of my spring break in bed. I kept the lights off, slept and walked, and barely ate. But after being in that state for a while, I slowly started to come out of the episode. I turned on my phone after being radio silent, started talking to my parents, and was eventually able to go outside and meet a few of my friends. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that my experience with depression was caused by what other people have said to me. It was more how my inner voice would contort their words, asking me why I couldn't just change my mindset, telling me that it was never going to change, and that life wasn't worth living if I couldn't be happy. It's terrible how our minds can warp something that's meant to be comforting into something that makes you so miserable. When we feel like we can't express ourselves, the emptiness festers and eats away at our other emotions. It gets harder and harder to pretend to be okay, and you just wind up feeling awful. Fortunately, after my various mental breakdowns, I was able to overcome the barrier I had with my friends. I realized that they would be a million times happier if I was just honest with them. And amazingly, I started to feel better about myself than I ever had before. But even though I've conquered the issue within myself and my inner circle of friends and family, there's still the issue of the greater population. We've all been told countless times that social media only shows the highlights and never the whole story. And to be honest, I never really paid too much attention to it all until college decisions started coming out. From December to April, all you see on your feed are happy people. Stories congratulating friends, posts on the HKIS 2022 account, and things like that. But you never see the other side of it. That's why, walking into the whole process, the amount of pain I felt with every rejection hit me like a truck. Not only because I wouldn't be able to go to a school I loved, but also because my gut instinct would be to open my phone and see who actually got in. But the unfortunate truth is, I would never know who was struggling like I was. Since society deems that only happy emotions are appropriate to share on a large scale, it leaves the sad people feeling very lonely. We don't know who else is going through what we are, and we don't really know who we can talk to. I'm not saying that I expect people to broadcast their failures to the world, but it would be nice if we could let go of the shame we feel for feeling bad emotions. As countless doctors and therapists have told me, it's completely natural to feel sad, angry, jealous, and emotions like that. But only when we're able to accept that in ourselves and in others will we truly be able to be happy. Thank you.
Thank you for that powerful speech, Laura. We really appreciate you being vulnerable with us and sharing your own personal and true story.
Next up, we have another one of HKIS's ninth graders, Lauren, who will be talking a little bit about Lookism and essentially its growth in the context of her own cultural heritage of Korea.
I don't remember much of what 7-year-old me did, but I do remember a moment from a typical Korean family gathering. When I walked into my cousin's house, I was greeted by my family members. My grandma gave me a warm hug, and then looked me straight in the eye and helpfully pointed out all the weight I had gained. I know that she meant no harm, but that statement stayed with me. During the meal we all ate shortly after, I counted the bites of food I ate. Reflecting on such experiences, I came up with 2 questions. 1, why was talking about my flaws considered normal? And 2, what were the implications of this attitude on a macro level? 7-year-old me did not deserve deserve to feel bad about the way she looked, and neither do any one of you. But she wasn't alone. Throughout South Korea, the prevalence of lookism creates a world where individuals are evaluated by appearance, leading to thousands flocking to plastic surgery and rampant discrimination in all corners of society. Lookism is a cultural standard where physical appearance and beauty is greatly valued and used as a judgment point. Judging someone, consciously or unconsciously based on how they look, is dehumanizing. Lookism affects many in the world, but in South Korea, the discrimination certain individuals face and the self-loathing they endure is unparalleled. Individuals matching society's paradigm of good-looking are given more opportunities, are more well-liked, and are treated better in the job market. According to the Journal of Gynecology and Women's Health, the cultural infatuation with certain facial features emerges from physiognomy, which dates back to the Goryeo and Joseon dynasty. Physiognomy proclaims that one's appearance determines one's fate. Thus, altering one's appearance changes one's destiny. An example of such belief is that the higher the bridge of one's nose is, the more money they are expected to earn. Lookism in Korea is most prevalent in comparison to all other countries due to the unique history that has affected their citizens, which has led to a society that values beauty over all else. With the rise of lookism, plastic surgery has expanded beyond a subculture into a mainstream culture that penetrates deeply into society. So, what actually constitutes a beautiful face in South Korea? Essentially, double eyelids, plump lips, small nose, V-shaped jaw, flawless white skin, and a slim figure. Unfortunately, the features demanded by these strict beauty standards are not widely seen in South Korean populations. Only 40% of Koreans are born with double eyelids, for instance. Those who aren't born with these prized features feel the need to resort to cosmetic surgery. Such procedures include double eyelid surgery, brow reduction surgery, rhinoplasty, and forehead augmentation. Today, South Korea has been deemed by CNN a plastic surgery mecca. Around 1 in 3 South Korean women between the ages of 19 and 29 have had plastic surgery. It has been normalized, and in comparison to other nations, operations in South Korea are easily accessible to the general public. More and more vulnerable South Koreans are pushed towards a path of permanent alterations to fit into a pervasive and harmful societal narrative. Moreover, the effects of the ubiquity of plastic surgery and lookism extend into the workforce. Contrary to Korean women in the past, women now are more active in achieving economic independence for men by seeking employment. Stemming from patriarchal ideals, lookism and obsessive maintenance of beauty have become systemic to the extent that it has a very real limit on the professional opportunities women can achieve. It is no longer a surprise that attractive candidates will receive better treatment in the job market, especially nowadays when digital headshots are widely required in resumes. This assumption is evident in recent findings, that women with plastic surgery receive an increase in annual income from $300 to $700. The average Korean citizen has the glorified features of beautiful K-pop stars and actors shoved down their throat each and every day. Wherever we turn, be it MTR stations, bus stops, social media apps, even friendly conversation with their families, we are reminded of our flaws. The glorification of certain features is morally abhorrent, but when lookism threatens to kill the dreams of innocence, when it is a matter of life or death, we need to make a change. Let's tackle this issue from both the policy and representation standpoint. We need policy to combat issues of widespread plastic surgery and workplace discrimination and their immediate effects. We should introduce several checks and balances, such as firmer legislation against operations on patients 18 and younger, and consciously reducing the scale of plastic surgery advertisements that are widely displayed to the public. We need to follow the example of Han Tong-in, a member of the National Assembly, who recently introduced a bill that would fine employers who ask for a photograph or inquire about appearance, and push for stronger legislation against workplace discrimination, including the practice of requiring digital headshots. 2. Representation. We need to use representation and awareness to shift society's mindset. We should encourage companies to make a conscious effort to represent everyone. If we consciously include those with tan skin, monolids, wider noses, broader jaws, and different body types, those who do not fit the strict beauty standards will feel empowered and respected. And there will be a signaling effect on the wider society, that everyone is important and beautiful. Everyone should be encouraged to share their experiences dealing with lookism and beauty standards, to close friends or online, like Free the Corset activists, who strive to break free of the corset that is the Korean ideals of beauty. Though South Korea's technology is highly developed, the nation's conservatism is still pervasive today, and continues to influence societal norms and expectations. Despite the emphasis on beautiful complexion, lookism threatens to poison every pore of South Korean society. It will affect me my entire life. From the happiness of 7-year-old Lauren, to my self-esteem as an adolescent, to my professional career, no matter how hard I work, until the day I lay rest. The glorification of beauty and the subsequent rise in plastic surgery harms everyone. Stronger policy and increased awareness are solutions that can be reached. Change can be made. Tom Pura is an activist who promotes her message through photography. When she photographed her subjects, she asked them to fill out questionnaires asking what message they wanted to convey. One woman responded, "Dear sisters and friends, I wish we could become humans that exist as we are, and love and be loved as we are. You are you, I am me, we are us, without the makeup, without the corset, just a human. I love you always as you are." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for that speech. It really embodies the change-making attitude and ideas we foster here at TED. And next up.
Yeah, next we have Yunjung Choi. She'll be speaking about period poverty and her work in full voice. So let's give it up to Yunjung.
Hi everyone, I'm Yunjung, and I'll talk a little bit about how I started 4Girls. We've gone to the moon, brought the internet to life, developed life-changing medicines and technologies, and yet we have failed girls and women all around the world. There's a problem you may have not heard about yet it's affecting millions of young girls' education and women's opportunities to work every day. This is period poverty, and it is far more common than many people know. 1 in 4 women will experience period poverty in her lifetime. Let's take a moment to process this number. 1 out of 4 women. We are in the year 2022, and are still talking about period poverty. A hidden underside in our society, but a reality for an estimated 500 million women and girls worldwide, period poverty impacts girls both in their personal and professional life. For those who may have not heard, Period poverty is when girls and women face poor access to safe sanitation facilities and menstrual supplies. While menstruation is a way of life for millions of girls around the world, there's still an alarming number of them who, even to this day, lack access to safe management. According to the World Bank, girls could miss up to 4 consecutive days of school every month because of their periods. This means that for an average girl, particularly the girls living in rural areas, she could end up missing 10 to 20% of her education. The consequences of this are huge. Education is a powerful tool in lifting someone out of poverty, but period poverty continues to disproportionately pose as a barrier for girls trying to escape the poverty cycle by forcing them to trade off their education for access to clean toilets and period products. In fact, as many as 20 million girls drop out of school worldwide every year due to a lack of adequate hygiene products and sanitation facilities at schools. As a student myself, when I miss a few days of school, I already have trouble keeping up with the other students, so I can only imagine how these girls feel. We are fortunate enough to not have to worry about missing school because of the lack of access to sanitation facilities. But for many girls around the world, this is an ongoing issue. When we deprive young girls of the necessary hygiene and supplies to manage menstruation, we are also robbing them of their education. Missed school days can be seen as missed job opportunities. The challenges posed by poor hygiene management will continue to jeopardize the potential of girls if they're not properly addressed. After reading an article about period poverty, how it affects girls my age around the world, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was honestly shocked because I had never imagined period poverty to be such a widespread issue. This issue spoke to my heart, and it didn't sit right with me that a natural bodily function would hold girls back. In the beginning, when thinking about how I could raise funds in a long-term sustainable way, I thought about selling something related to food because I love cooking. Living here, I've realized that the herb basil is fairly more on the expensive side, so even though I would often want to use it when I cooked at home, I would not have it at home. So an idea sparked in my mind to sell basils in Hong Kong. So then I picked up my phone and started to call my friends and neighbors to ask for a small area of their balcony to be used as land for growing basil plants. Unfortunately, those I called either had no balcony or their balcony was too small to grow basil plants, which makes sense after all we are living in Hong Kong. I didn't want to give up, however. Thus, I tried to grow basil plants at home. However, as more days had passed and then COVID hit, I realized there would be multiple challenges to selling such herbs. Firstly, my balcony would be too small to grow enough plants to sell for fundraising. In addition, I was hit with the hard reality that it would be physically impossible to ship the basil plants. Consequently, I thought very hard for the following weeks to think about what I could sell to raise funds. I didn't want to sell baked goods because as it would not be sustainable in the long run. One day, as I was cooking and using the pepper grinder to add some spice to my fried rice, I suddenly thought about selling these Cambodian peppers. They were light, would be easy to ship, and would have a long shelf life, which all checked the box for me that made it perfect for fundraising during such uncertain times. So with this in mind, the project For Girls, with the primary objective of raising funds for girls in Cambodia, was born from the kitchen. After many weeks of thorough research and communication with different farms in Cambodia, I opened my first ever online store on Etsy. However, the joy of sharing my Etsy store with my friends, families, and those around me soon ended. One day, I was woken by the most heartbreaking email that my Etsy store had shut down because the manager of the pepper store, which is me, was underage, as I created the shop using my HKID. Throughout the years, I failed on multiple occasions and had numerous challenges. However, I believe that it was these failures during the process that allowed me to understand an extremely important and powerful tool that we all can use. I realized that what I was searching for was always within me, the courage to speak out. Even if we start small, we have, as individuals, the power to create change. With the help of our buyers, we were able to contribute to the construction of an entire bathroom with clean water sanitation facilities at a school in rural Cambodia. Although my start is very small, I believe that the end goal will be very meaningful. This is also why the logo of 4 Girls is a heart with a pad in the center. As a living in Asia, I've learned that periods are something to be shy to talk about, so I hope that my heart could be expressed through the logo. Period poverty is not just a woman's issue. It's everyone's responsibility. When period poverty undermines fundamental human rights, girls cannot access safe means of managing their periods and are deprived of their dignity. For girls, we must protect the right to health, education, work, and sanitation. With the media shining light on critical issues like the pandemic and climate change, period poverty, an equally important issue, drops down on the list. The first step we all need to take to work together is to recognize that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Because if we don't talk about it, we won't know it's a problem. We can't change something until we're aware of it. I ask you to not be a bystander, but a supporter. I ask you to not be shy, but to speak out. I ask you to call it out. Call out period poverty. Call it to those around you. The best way to start is by just having these conversations. So the question I have for you, as you think about how might you, your role might play, is how might you lend your voice? For me, it was a spark of anger, empathy, love, and a touch of pepper from the kitchen where I started. Thank you so much for listening, and please visit the 4 Girls Pepper Shop where you can show your support.
Thank you so much to Yoonjung for that speech. It's very inspiring to see that with a little bit of ingenuity and the right motivation, you can make change in global issues that may seem larger than life.
Yeah, our next speaker and our last student speaker is Oliver Teja, and he will be speaking on taking a humanistic lens to a financial process called hedging. So yeah, let's give it up for Oliver.
Since a young age, I've always had an interest in investing. I would often use birthday and Chinese New Year money to invest in stocks rather than purchasing toys and gadgets. Through the years, I've learned the importance of protecting your assets. After buying my first share of a publicly traded stock, I was hooked. The thought of owning a piece of such an immense company was captivating. What felt even better was when the stock prices went up and I saw my investment increase in value. But what felt awful was when months of returns were swallowed up in a swoop in the fall of the share prices. Conditions can be unpredictable. Things can change in an instant no matter how much research is done. I've always wanted to put myself in the best possible situation to succeed and mitigate as much risk and volatility. It became essential for me to plan ahead and use the tools available at my expense to do just that. Hedging is one great example of how this can be accomplished. Hedging is a risk management strategy employed to offset potential losses in investments by taking a position in an oppositely related asset. It's often used in the financial and commodities market. Hedging strategies typically involve derivatives such as options and futures contracts. I know this all sounds super confusing, but it's relatively simple and quite fascinating. Let me show you. First, we need to understand what a futures contract is. A futures contract is a contract between two parties, the seller and the buyer. The seller of the contract has the obligation to purchase something at a certain price, no matter future market fluctuations, and the buyer has the right to purchase the item at a predetermined price. Two terms that are fundamental when it comes to hedging is the obligation and the right. So let's look at an example of a farmer and a baker. A farmer and a baker decide to enter a futures contract that states no matter the future price of wheat, the farmer will always have the right to sell the wheat to the baker for $7. Because of this, the farmer locks in a solid $3 minus the cost of purchasing the futures contract, let's say 20 cents. So in the future, if the price of wheat drops, the farmer is safe as he's locked in a profit of $2.80. In the future, if the price goes up, he loses out on potential gains, but he's okay with that as he prefers the peace of mind and the locked $2.80 profit. At the end of the day, he's in the business of selling crops, not financial market speculation. Now, the baker has also secured a $1.20 profit. This comes from buying the wheat at $7, selling the bread at $8, and the 20 cents from selling the futures contract. No matter the future price of wheat, the baker always has the obligation to purchase the supply at $7. If the price of wheat drops, the baker could have realized greater profits, but the price of wheat could also rise. And the baker would rather secure his earnings so the futures contract allow both the buyer and the sellers to neutralize any risk of future price changes and focus on their core business. One of the largest and most successful hedges was accomplished by businessman Mark Cuban during the dot-com bubble. The dot-com bubble was a stock market bubble caused by excessive speculation in internet-related companies in the late 1990s, the Stone Age, a period of massive growth and use and adoption of the internet. Cuban had just sold his internet radio startup, Broadcast.com, for $5.7 billion in April 1999. He earned 14.6 million Yahoo shares as a part of his payment. Yahoo's stock price was about $95 at the time, valuing Cuban's stake at roughly $1.4 billion US. But Cuban recognized the tech industry was overheating, acknowledging that share prices would not go up forever. But his shares were vested, meaning he couldn't sell his shares until 6 months. So Cuban worked with Goldman Sachs to craft the collar, which means he bought a downside put at the strike price of $85, meaning he bought a futures contract to protect his shares in case of a drop. So if Yahoo's share price went to zero, Cuban could still buy back the shares at $85. He simultaneously sold an upside call to earn back some of the money he spent. This is the equivalent of selling an options contract, allowing himself to make back some of the money that he spent on buying the downside puts. He took every penny he had, around $20 million US in cash at the time, and bought a put on the index against the entire market. The tech bubble continued to expand for several months, driving Yahoo's stock price above $230 by January 2000. But a few months later, the bubble burst, plummeting the industry stock, but Cuban was protected. His multi-million-dollar hedge safeguarded his billions worth of assets. Obviously, in this case, spending millions of dollars to hedge stock looks like a lot, but if you compare how much he spent to how much of his assets were protected, it looks like nothing. Hedging is a great way for businesses to restore profits during tough times. It's great as individuals and businesses can calculate max losses adjusted to their preferred risk appetite. Therefore, you can have a good night's sleep without worrying about losing more than you can afford. It's all about planning ahead, understanding the risks you're willing to take, and creating a secure plan where every step is planned out ahead of time, and you know every single possible outcome. One great example of this would be the market during COVID-19 pandemic. Many businesses have faced unpredictable situations with radical and volatile changes. COVID has been a huge catalyst for countless companies to start implementing hedging strategies to protect themselves from bad situations. In life, it's important to plan ahead and use the tools available at your expense. Hedging is one great example of this and how it can be used for your material possessions. However, the concept can be implemented far beyond that and can connect to one's everyday life, as materialistic objects are not the only thing that are of value. Relationships, health, dreams, and more are all things that need to be sheltered and protected. The concept of hedging can go far beyond financial and physical confines. Planning ahead will ensure a heightened probability and success and mitigate risks in whatever you hope to achieve.
Thank you for making that somewhat difficult topic easier to understand for all of us. And I hope you're able to take away some of those concepts into a real human life setting.
Next up, we have HKIS's very own faculty member, Ms. Nolasco, who will be talking a little bit about her hobby of thrifting and how this can relate to a theme of restoration.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I can't actually see you, so that helps with my nerves. I have to tell you, even though my job is to get up and teach you every day, speak in front of people, public speaking is my worst nightmare. I actually feel like that shy high school student that I used to be, shrinking down in my seat as much as I could to avoid being called on. Here I am again. But I'm going to go with that because it kind of connects with what I'm here to talk about. One of the questions I'm asked a lot about thrifting is, when did you start thrifting? And that answer always brings me back to being that shy kid, and that was when I was your age. So I'm going to back up a little bit, give you a little bit of information about myself. I am a teacher's kid. I grew up in Malaysia, between two cultures. I'm half Chinese Malaysian, and I'm half Australian. And I went to the International School of Kuala Lumpur. I loved my dance team. I don't know that I was very good. I used to be the student coordinator of our school's forensic tournament, and I loved being involved in drama. It was usually behind the scenes, you know, I was doing the makeup, helping with costumes, or sometimes I was a backup dancer. I also worked as a babysitter, made money that way, and I also, we had like a kiosk, a school snack shack that I worked at on the weekends. And I even eventually became a manager, which means I had to kind of calculate people's payroll and stuff like that. So that's what I did. And that's me in the back, flipping burgers and hot dogs in a crop top. Genius move, guys. Like working at a grill with a bare tummy, grease splatters, so good. Also, this is clearly a time before dress codes made midriffs taboo. Anyway, my parents were local hire teachers, which means that they had a different contract than other teachers, their colleagues that were hired internationally. And that meant, you know, they didn't have housing, etc., that had to come out of their salary. So that's why I worked to have my own spending money. I grew up in hand-me-downs. There would often be other families at school that would hand things to us. And that was always exciting. I enjoyed that because it meant that sometimes, because we didn't have money to buy brand name clothes, sometimes things came in those bags of hand-me-downs that had labels like The Gap or Esprit. I shopped in markets in Malaysia, a lot like what we have here in Causeway Bay and Mongkok and places like that. And I also used to shop at a place called The Reject Shop. Don't you like that? The Reject Shop? Yay, let's go in there. But the Reject Shop was one of those stores where you can buy surplus stock from retail brands, cast-offs, samples, and they often used to cut the labels out. And I still love to shop at places like that. Sun and Moon and Stanley Market is a go-to for me, and they're all over the place. But you know, when I was in high school, I wanted nothing more than to fit in. And have a look at my junior year superlative, guys. Most likely to take the road not taken. I was failing at fitting in. So let me give you a little bit of context for this. My co-recipient, Moritz, was new to school that year. He was from Germany, and he was mysterious and unique because, well, you know, his style was different from everybody else's. It was more Americanized at my school. And he was like European, you know? He listened to different music, he had a different haircut. He, even with a uniform, wore kind of different style of clothing. And so that was mysterious and unique. No one really quite could figure him out. I am fairly certain that I got the award of most likely to take the road not taken because that summer we returned from a family vacation in Australia, and I had fully embraced that knee-high socks and brogues trend that never made it to Malaysia. I was the only one. And I was picking things up in op shops, which are like thrift shops. And so, you know, I swear when they had that category that it was actually most unique, but they changed it to most likely to take the road not taken at last minute. And you know, unique is a nice way of saying different, and I know that's what kids meant anyway. You know, I'm proud of being different now and unique, but can you see how mortified I was? Look at my face, to be lumped in with new weird guy from Germany. So, all right, that's my origin story. Enough of that. You get the idea, right? I've been thrifting for a long time, so I'm going to share some of my lessons. What have I actually learned while thrifting? Well, the biggest one is this. There are a lot of clothes on this planet. A lot. You know, thrift stores are huge. When I do thrift in the States, and when I go to op shops in Australia, there are these massive warehouses. And any good thrifter knows that you have to go frequently because you have to know when they're going to put more stuff out. And it's every week. And that sinks in because it makes me think, God, there are a lot of clothes that people just don't want, that they donate or they throw away or whatever. In fact, every second around the world, the equivalent of 1 truckload of textiles is landfilled or incinerated. Every second. In Hong Kong, we send 339 tons of textiles to landfill every day. Landfill. That's trash. So, you know, the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry, only next to oil. And we've seen those like heart-wrenching images of oil spills where the animals are endangered and stuff like that. And it sits with you, but, you know, from all my thrifting, and I've also worked with an organization called Redress, where I've kind of run some clothing donation sorting. My daughter and I have gone together. Until you actually are in it and you see how many clothes there are, these facts don't really hit you like they do when you're there. And so much of what you find at the thrift store is new with tags, which means somebody bought it and never wore it. Maybe they bought multiple colors, or it was an impulse buy, but it's brand new. And it's sitting there, and it's either gone to donation or gone to the thrift store. And a lot of it is fast fashion, but it's not just that. So this has made me think a lot about our consumption habits. I interact a lot with other thrift influencers on Instagram, and a lot of what they do, and actually fashion influencers on Instagram too, they love to do these hauls, right? This is my thrift haul. This is my whatever brand haul. And the idea of a haul is that you buy a lot and you buy it fast, right? And let me show you everything. And so I think that's a really dangerous part of our consumption habits. And I've thought a lot about that myself. We also have this idea that, well, if you go to an event, like you're invited to a wedding, or you go to graduation, or you're heading to prom, or you've got a 21st birthday party, that you need a new outfit for it. And you don't. You don't really need a new outfit for it, because those are often items, or those are often events where you're never really going to wear the clothes again, right? So I try to borrow when I have an occasion, or kind of reinvent things. Here you can see, I think this is maybe 7th grade, and out of necessity, I didn't get a new dress. That's my mom's dress, but I accessorized it with some cool things I found in the market. It was the 80s, guys. I was trying to channel Madonna. I think I even had lace gloves at one point. But it doesn't have to be new. It can be new to you, and that can be something that you pick up at a thrift shop, or it can be something that you borrow, or whatever. And did you know that actually we only wear about 20% of our wardrobes 80% of the time? So I often think about that 80% of clothing that sits in my closet untouched. And that's really where a lot of my upcycling or remaking or reworking came from, was this 80% of my wardrobe that just kind of sits there. All right, another lesson I've learned through thrifting and through working with Redress and kind of going through clothing donation is that you have to learn to take care of your things. Guys, before you leave high school, if you don't know how to sew, people, sorry, everybody, people. Learn to sew, and I don't mean with a machine, although that's awesome if you do know how to do that. But simple things, like sew on a button, right? Sew up a little bit of a hem if it starts to fall. Learn how to remove stains. Don't wait, right? If something spills on your clothes when you're sitting at dinner, treat it right away, and you don't need harsh chemicals either. You can just do it quite easily with baking soda and vinegar. Because actually 95% of textiles that are sent to landfill can be reused, repaired, or recycled. It's so heartbreaking when you come across something that's just missing one little button and somebody got rid of it. So a sewing kit, make yourself one before you head off to university. And Google. You can Google anything. There's all these resources for how you can get stains out. And if a stain or a tear or something like that is beyond repair, change the item of clothing. If it's on the bottom of your pants, something is spilled, can you make it shorts? Can you do something else with the other fabric? So that's something else I've learned. Third thing, don't get rid of anything. I mean, I know, right? Send stuff to landfill, or send stuff to a donation, or share it with your friends, but be careful what you do. Biggest regret, I tell you, is getting rid of this band tee. I used to love Metallica. In fact, I still love Metallica, and my friend gave me this, not that guy, that guy's an old boyfriend. But this t-shirt I've tried to find on Etsy and places like that, and it's worth a lot of money. So don't get rid of like special things. Band tees, concert tees, things like that that have an occasion. I'm not talking about the ones that you're buying at H&M or somewhere like that, like legit ones like that, okay? In fact, did you know that once an item is 20 years old, it's considered vintage? So I'm loving all of the 90s style coming back in and all the new things that are 90s style, and I'm wishing that I kept things from the 90s. Y2K style now coming back into fashion. Not so excited about that because I lived through low-rise jeans, and there are many painful things that I wish I could forget. But still, that to say, it's fun to see things come back around. Which kind of leads me to my next thing. Oh wait, I'm going to show you this picture first though. Here are actual things, like have a look at my friend Helena's video camera there. This is last day of school, and my film camera. Vintage items now because they're more than 20 years old and you guys are loving the film cameras. Doesn't she look like she works at CNN or something? It's humorous to me. Anyway, so hang on to these things because they come back. Trends are cyclical. So that leads me to this. Some of the influencers, thrift influencers and people that I connect with inspired me to create this challenge. And this happened in 2020 when we were all stuck in our houses and we couldn't go anywhere. And I noticed that we were all looking for something to kind of be an outlet. And trends are cyclical, so we thought, why not have a challenge, trends in your closet, where you, instead of going out to buy new things, buy the things that are trendy because they come from somewhere else, go into your closet and what do you have that you can reimagine to be the trends? How can you update it a little bit, remake your clothes, change them a tiny bit so that you can fit the trends, the things that are trending. And I've done this now for 2 years. We do it every season. And we kind of look to see what's being forecasted by Vogue and other places and on the runways. And I've noticed, even in the 2 years that I've been running this challenge, how the trends just stay. They get changed, called a little bit different. It was cottagecore, now it's cabincore or something like that, but they're all still there, just a little bit tweaked. So don't let retail brands make you think that you need the new one, just re-envision the one that you've got, okay? Last lesson that I learned. You are never too old to play dress up. I love Spirit Week because I get to dress up in costumes. And I love it because I get to make my colleagues dress up in costumes. But it's all about having fun. My motto is that you don't have to wait for an occasion, you make the occasion special. And just have fun. Use your clothes for costumes. In Alaska's, our household is, we love to play dress up. We also love to wear costumes. Halloween is a favorite time of year for us. But you don't need to go out and buy a costume. You can make it out of the clothes that you have. or share things with people. Never miss an opportunity to wear a costume, because it pushes you to be creative with what you have and you wear your clothes more. And then, you know, because I am the age that I am, I've also learned that there are a lot of people who are going to tell you what you can't wear. And I don't believe that at all. I don't subscribe to that at all. Wear what you want, even if it's out of style, because it's how you wear it that is stylish. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up. I tend to kind of ramble. I used to really feel very self-conscious about my love of fashion and style and thrifting. You know, on the things like, well, how big is your closet? Or it must be nice to have time to get dressed up. Or why are you so dressed up? Or this, what day is today? Like, what is the theme? And I'm like, it's Wednesday? And I really worried that people thought because fashion felt like a frivolous hobby, that it made me a shallow person. But I know that I'm not. I know that I'm not. I've also had lots of wonderful conversations with people when they come up to me like, I love what you're wearing, or this is great, or blah, blah, blah. And it's so nice to feel like you can connect with people like this. But I know that I'm not a shallow person because I think a lot about fashion and the fashion industry, and they have a lot to answer for when it comes to environmental impacts and human rights and sustainability in general. And I came to realize that a lot of what drives my passion for self-expression through fashion has to do with my love of the environment. Now, I hate cliches, and I hate to espouse cliches, but here's one that works for me to close up my speech. The clothes don't make the man or woman or person, but I disagree. I really do, because I think they do make the person. What you wear, and how you wear it, especially in our day and age, knowing what we do about the impact of the fashion industry, has everything to do with your values and what you want the world to be. First impressions really do count, and those impressions are based on what you wear and how you present yourself. So I'm going to leave you with this. What do you want your clothes to say about you? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nolasco, for that speech. It really shows how, when we want to restore things, maybe we just don't look at replacing the old with the new, but maybe look at the old with a new perspective. And with that, it brings us to the conclusion of our conference. We'd like to thank all of our speakers who have worked tremendously hard, especially you know, in this time of COVID, right after AP week, during finals, and the 9th graders with their formatives. It's very difficult to stay committed and memorize these speeches during this time. So we'd like to thank you all for speaking today. It's definitely a big commitment, and you all deserve a round of applause.
Yeah, the next kind of group of individuals that definitely goes overlooked, they're not the ones on stage, but they're the ones in the background. Our committee members are a tremendous help to this event. They're the reason why we're able to run it, and especially Nick and I, she's not up here right now, she's in the audience, but Hope, our marketing director, she's been a brilliant help the last few months, and without her, really this event wouldn't happen. So thank you so much for our committee, and especially Hope.
Another round of applause. This conference also couldn't be possible without the help of Ms. Stevens, SDLT and Tech Theater, who are up there next to the cameras. They're in charge of filming this conference, bringing all these nice lights onto our speakers. So this conference would not be possible without them, and maybe another round of applause for them too.
And the last for our thank yous, we weren't sure if we were really able to hold this conference this year. I think about a month ago, Nick and I were really just deciding whether we should postpone it to next year or whether we should do something online. So it's honestly a miracle that we were able to host this event live in person. And it's just, that is all to the thanks of Ms. Fine and Dr. Loveland. They were able to allow us to have this event, to have an audience, and to live stream, so it was just a great effort by everyone, so yeah.
Yeah, but before we end though, there's just one last person we'd like to thank, obviously Subin. And Subin has been, you might not know this, but he's been revolutionary in bringing TEDx back to HKIS. TED it used to be a conference in 2016, but there was a large hiatus in between, and Subin was instrumental in bringing this conference back last year, and especially when we didn't know whether this conference would happen, especially given the COVID situation. Subin pushed very hard, despite all the senioritis, he got through it, and I'd like to thank him for all the guidance that he's given me throughout this entire process, and all he's done for TEDx and the conference.
Yeah, and with that, I'd also like to thank, I have to thank you now, right? I'd like to thank you, Nick, as well. I mean, you've definitely been a great person that I can depend on and a great support. And I really look at you as the future of the school and a leader here. So I'm really glad that you were able to share this with me and that you're able to kind of carry the torch next year. I know you were going through a lot with the second semester junior year, so I really appreciate all of your help and work. But yeah, with that being said, the event has now officially come to a close. We thank everyone who came in the audience, although there are a few of you. And yeah, so if you want to view these clips later, we will be having all recordings of them, and we may even be posting them on YouTube if possible. But yeah, thanks for coming, everyone.
Should we put them